Greetings and thanks for joining us once again for another bi-weekly update. A pleasure to be here with you. My name is Carlos Salinas, and I'm the Regional Director for the U.S. Soybean Export Council in the Americas. This presentation is assigned for USEC's key customers and for USEC's internal purposes. I hope you find the information valuable, and please continue to send us your feedback so we can improve this presentation. As we always do, we like to recognize USEC's expanding membership. Within our membership, we have soybean processors, soybean exporters, seed companies, equipment manufacturers, railroads, brokers, surveyors, among many other important stakeholders and funding sources. And we cannot forget the support and the contribution that we receive from the U.S. soybean farmer. Without that support, this presentation would not be possible. We have a short agenda today. I want to talk about world crush margins and farmer selling. I do want to share a comparison with you of CME September soybean prices in relationship to soybean prices converted to Brazilian reais. We want to talk about U.S. weather and U.S. crop conditions. Please stay with us. We'll be brief, and I think you'll find the information to come very valuable. This last couple of weeks, we have many companies, including companies within our membership, which have shared their quarterly earnings results. And I would have to congratulate all of them for providing outstanding results. Great to see the expansion in our industry, the expansion in demand, and certainly good to have being in a growing industry. The slide I'm about to show you is put together actually by ADM as part of their quarterly earnings presentation, and it provides us a very good review of crush margins globally, and specifically the evolution of those crush margins between Q1 and certainly Q2 for ADM. Again, these are estimates. They're not perfect, but I think they give us a very good guidance. And it's good to see in the U.S. we've seen those crush margins expand, as you can see in this slide, from $55 to $65 a metric ton. We've gone from $70 to $80 a metric ton. I've heard even higher numbers from other sources in our industry. As you can imagine, crush plants are scattered throughout many of our growing regions and ports. So those numbers can be quite variable as they attend different markets and get their supply from different sources. In Europe, we've seen a reduction of those crush margins to $20 to $30 a metric ton. Same thing in Brazil. We've seen that reduction to $15 to $35 a metric ton. And I think I want to highlight here the reduction that we've seen in Argentina. And I think both CEOs from Bunge, Greg Heckman, and Juan Luciano from ADM highlighted the difficult situation on soybean supply in Argentina. As you well know, the crop is maybe 21 million metric tons, and both highlight that they're beginning to feel the lack of bean availability, and some other origin will have to make up for that lack of supply. Most likely, it will be the U.S. and maybe Brazil to some extent. So it's going to be interesting how the world navigates that environment over the next few months. When we look at China, it's good to see the improvement on crush margins in China, particularly as we begin to enter the U.S. soybean export window. And I think we've also seen other indicators such as hog prices in China begin to recover. So again, good progress, good to see. When we talk about board crush margins, or the difference between soybean prices, soybean meal prices, and soybean oil prices in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, ADM puts that at $75 a metric ton, which I'm sure was accurate at the time that they took this picture, but the most recent numbers have certainly improved. Depending what month you're looking at, you could be looking at something between $90 a metric ton to $100 a metric ton. So great to see that expansion. Even though what's more important is really what the crushers actually get to lock and execute, right? Now, moving forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about farmer selling, because I think this slide and this presentation provided by ADM on their quarterly earnings tells a little bit of a story. When you take a look at farmer selling in Brazil, you can see that farmer selling for this current crop in Brazil is 66%. That compares to 74% last year and 79% on a 5-year average. The Brazilian farmer certainly has lost some of that incentive to sell more aggressively. Maybe we'll talk about the reasons here in a little bit. When you take a look at their new crop, that is the crop for 2024, which has not yet been planted. Again, Brazil typically sells a little bit further ahead. Now they've only commercialized 11% of that crop. So not much selling taking place these days in Brazil. When we take a look at the U.S. and maybe for more reasons than one, we have seen farmers selling for the crop that's about to come out at 13%. Last year we were at 22%, so it's a significant drop compared to last year. And the 5-year average is 15%. So, but again, 13% to farmer selling compared to 22 during the same time last year, I think again tells us a story on the U.S. And without the farmer liquidity, as you well know, and if the CME and Chicago doesn't help, something else will need to help us. In Brazil, it could be the currency, it could be basis. In the U.S., it would have to be basis to entice the farmer to get more aggressive on farmer selling. Otherwise, basis will have to do the work. There's no doubt. But talking about prices, I wanted to share with you a comparison that I've done. I'm taking CME prices, which are, of course, dollar denominated, but I'm also converting September CME prices on soybeans in reais, and I'm comparing these two prices. And what I've done is I normalize those prices at 100% as of January 1 of this year, and we can watch that evolution in percentage terms and see if the only variables that we had in mind for determining prices, which are not only two variables, there are many others, but if we look at only these two variables, we can see the impact that currency has had in Brazilian soybean prices. So when we take a look at September CME soybean prices, we can see that year to date, those prices have dropped slightly over 5%, given the recent break that we've seen on the board. But when you take a look at September soybean prices and convert it to Brazilian reais, because of the impact of the currency, we see those prices have dropped over 16%. And I believe this could be in part one of the main reasons why we're seeing less aggressive farmer selling in Brazil. And certainly in the US, we can talk about weather in a bit, but I think this kind of magnifies the importance of the risk that you have in front of you, certainly from a supply perspective and also from a risk or basis perspective. So again, it's good to get help and discuss those elements with your team. Let's talk about weather in the US. And I would say that we're entering the key window, and unfortunately, things are not looking the greatest. We've seen better times before. We have some of our key growing states going through some moderate, severe drought, and even some areas, some extreme drought. So we have to be aware of the conditions that we have today. Again, not ideal. We've seen better maps before. The good thing is that on the outlook that was released July 31st, and it's valid for August, this outlook tells us that we have quite a few areas where the drought remains, but it improves, and some areas where we have drought removal likely, which is great to see. So there is some improvement on the horizon again, but the evolution of weather the next few weeks is going to be critical to be Neil. Now let's take a look at the map, not a map, but really the table where we talk about agriculture and drought, and we talk about the areas of soybeans or corn that are experiencing moderate or more intense drought. That number for soybeans as of August 1st was 51%. The previous week, it was a 53%. So let's say we're better, right? We have less area that is struggling through this drought conditions, which is great to see. I hope that trend continues moving forward. But when we compare to last year, right, we only had 28% of the soybean area last year that had more moderate or more intense drought. So something to keep in mind. When we take a look at corn, the numbers are very similar as far as from a trend. We've seen an improvement where only 57% of that crop is is struggling with moderate to more intense drought compared to 59% last week, but last year that was at 31%. So this conditions are impacting both soybeans and corn, of course. And this is also impacting our crop conditions. Last Monday, the USDA published the soybean crop conditions, where we have 52% of the soybeans are in good to excellent conditions, which implies that 48% are not. But when you take a look at this red line, this compares our current situation versus the past 20 years. Those little thin lines that you see are the conditions over the past 20 years at this point in time. And you can see, obviously, that we're not, thank goodness, we're far away from what 2012 was, but we've seen for sure better crop conditions in the past. Again, it's good to be aware of all these risks. And it looks like we're going to remain in a very volatile environment. And I would highly encourage you to seek out some of our membership that has expertise on risk management and providing tools that can guide you through these challenging times, and make sure you evaluate the risk properly. And as I always say, it's important to lock in your physical supplies in this environment. You don't have to lock in futures prices. You can buy bases and you can lock in the physical supply, but certainly futures can be priced later, and you can take some protection from the different tools offered by such as some of the ones that we have in our membership. I hope the information here was valuable. I thank you for your time, and please continue to send us your feedback. We want to improve this presentation moving forward. Thanks again, and I wish you a great week.